This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network. The Power Play Post Show is on the air, covering minor league hockey since 2003, and now covering the Binghamton Black Bears with news, reactions, and in-depth interviews only heard here. And now from the Box Studios in Kirkwood, New York, here is your host of the Power Play Post Show, Bob Howard.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for June 20th, 2024. This is season 13, episode number 51, and episode number 436 in the long-running podcast that is the Power Play Post Show. Hello, everybody. I am Bob Howard once again. Thank you for listening to the Power Play Post Show. Hey, it's the summertime. Well, I guess the summer starts in like another day, officially. But we are doing two shows in a row, back to back. Last week we had Stephen Brown, who from the Troy Albany Ice Cats, an under-19 ladies program team. If you hadn't listened to that yet, go check it out. It's a really great interview with a guy who's from Vestal, New York, who played hockey here locally through the STHA, and then of course Vestal and Broome. The BCC Hornets before going to play up in SUNY Albany and then becoming a head coach at different levels. Great guy, great interview. And I'm really excited about the interview you guys are about to hear. I talked to him half of the time about hockey and the other half about music because he and I both love music and we love some of the same bands as well, which is pretty cool. And so it just, this summer I wanted to make sure I kept in touch and brought you the news when we could bring you the news, when the news is going to be announced. And last year, believe it or not, at this time, we'd already had reports of 3 or 4 signings of players. This year, only one so far. We've got the head coach re-signed and we've got the captain re-signed. That's it. That's it. That's all the people that are on the board right now. So obviously the Black Bears will have to play catch up a little bit. Now I know Brant right now is in Italy with his fiance Gemma, and they're having a great time. So awesome to them being over there. And you can kind of follow Brant a little bit on social media, especially on Instagram, and you can kind of see some of the stuff. So he's having a good time over there, and he deserves this vacation. He deserves this kind of break. I spoke to him just a couple text messages last week before they left and everything. Just wanted to check in and say hello and see how he was doing. He seems to be in good spirits. He is down in Philadelphia. Well, they're back down in Philadelphia for the summertime. And I think it'll be interesting to see. And he's going to have a lot of work to do. I think every head coach right now, with the way the league is waiting to see what's happening with one team. There's a team that is struggling maybe a little bit and needs possibly some new ownership. And I think the league really wants to keep this league or get this league to 14 teams and play this season with a more balanced schedule between the teams. It's not going to be perfectly balanced. It's not going to be like the NHL where you play every single team at least once or twice. Not going to be anything like that. But I think they're trying to really keep that. And so that if that means we could schedule a little bit later, the expansion draft a little bit later, that's just how it's going to be. And then head coaches like Steve Harrison in Carolina, obviously Brant here in Binghamton, maybe Billy McCurry. They're going to have some things in place and be ready for when the expansion draft happens, and then you can start signing people. Because, in Binghamton's case, right, 12 guys were protected, 12 guys are not protected. Those 12 guys that are not protected, we have to wait and see to see if any of those guys get picked up and get moved to another team. Now, they also have to sign with that other team, and that's not necessarily always going to happen. And the league is going to have to figure out its rules because you don't want people to sit and not play just because they didn't want to go to play in Baton Rouge, right? Or Monroe or whatever. Or maybe guys that are living down in the Mississippi Gulf Coast who play hockey, maybe they don't want to come to Binghamton to play, right? Maybe they don't want to go to Hudson Valley to play. because it's so far away from home. And these guys have to rely on the support of sometimes family members and people. It's really a very different situation than when the AHL was in Binghamton. Because the AHL, there was minimum salaries. They were making a livable wage. They're making a livable wage in the AHL. Maybe not so much in the ECHL. Maybe those guys could get paid just a tiny bit more, but they still get paid more than the SP and the FPHL. And we have to remember, for the love of the game in some cases. Let's get to our must-read so I can talk about, obviously, Tyson Kirkby. The Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcasts, and please subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. We've got a few more people, even just this week, which is great in the off season. Still getting people to come over and join the group. Just go to Facebook and search Power Play Post Show. Check out the BinghamtonHockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And on this edition of the Power Play Post Show, I'm very happy to have him back on. Binghamton Black Bears championship goaltender Nolan Egbert. And we talk to Nolan about a few different things about, the off season, his training, what he's doing. And we talk about music because he and I are both lovers of music and even some of the same music as well. And I just get his thoughts on some of it. And he has this passion and this love for Pink Floyd and Rush and Pearl Jam from the 90s. It's so eclectic. It's rock, but it's from different eras, different sounds, which is great. And we get into it pretty nicely, which is pretty cool. All right, let's talk a little bit about the news of the week, really, right? Because there's only been other than Brant being signed and coming back as head coach, which I think was huge because that is a domino effect for how the rest of the season is going to go. Not that any other coach couldn't come in and have success and do well, because obviously Coach Sherwood did that after Gary Gill left. Coach Sherwood came in and started the domino effect of, releasing certain players and bringing in some of his own guys, so on and so forth. Now, I will say that when Brant signed back up here in Binghamton, I thought, okay, there's a hope that Donald Oliveri will play here again, right? Maybe 20 games. Maybe they'll play 20 games and try to run it back, as that's the new hashtag for the Binghamton Black Bears, run it back. So I asked Don on the ice after they won the championship, is this it? Do you go off raising the cup, right? Is this it for you? And he couldn't answer it. He didn't answer. It was an unfair question by me, but it's one that I figured with a smile on my face I could ask Don that question. And now I'm starting to think, hey, listen, maybe he plays 20 games and, gets qualified for the playoffs and gets into the playoffs. So, but I think with Brant re-signing, it really does help the team in a lot of aspects, right? But also when Tyson Kirkby re-signed this week, I think that also helps. All the guys that played with Tyson Kirkby this year and that won the cup with Tyson Kirkby knows what they're getting. And I think I said in my little post on the Facebook page, right, the fans in other teams, other cities hate him. Players and maybe even coaches don't like him so much. They act that way like they don't like him. However, if he was on their team, they'd probably be pretty happy with the things that he accomplishes. Clutch goals. Getting into the head of goaltenders like he did with Trevor Babin. And that got basically Trevor Babin kicked out. And that game, too, was just basically a formality after that because the Black Bears took out. Now, Gonzalez did a great job, don't get me wrong. But the Black Bears did what they needed to do, which was get out the guy that if he gets in between the pipes and he's solid, sometimes it's hard to beat him. And I think that was really one of the great attributes of what Tyson Kirkby did this year. He was able to score some clutch goals. He was able to do some things on the ice that got the rest of the team going. And he sometimes put the whole team on his back and on his shoulders. And I I just see it that way when it comes to Tyson. So if you're going to build a team, that's the first guy you want to get re-signed. Now, he also said he was coming back. I was standing there when the chaplain of the team asked him, hey, are you going to be back next season? Flat out asked Tyson that. Tyson said, yes, without a doubt, I am coming back. This is where I'm going to play. And then I made the comment to him. I was like, you can't predict what's going to happen right now, Tyson. I mean, come on. If an SP team or an ECHL team came a-calling, and he said, no, I've been to the SPHL. I've seen it. I would rather play here. Sometimes you do want to be a big dog in a small pond, right? Or a big dog in a medium-sized pond, right? So maybe this is the right place for Tyson Kirkby. And if the ECHL came a-calling because he's shown and exhibited certain qualities, so there are certain things that Tyson Kirkby does that maybe doesn't even show up on the stat sheet that I think could eventually get him a call-up. But how long can someone play at the FPHL level? How long can someone survive, right, when they're not even making minimum wage, so to speak, right? They're barely making enough money to get by. How long can they last? But it's one of those things that even if he went to the SPHL and made an extra $50 a week or an extra $75, is that really that amount of money worth that when he could be down here? I mean, he has 78 goals in just 2 full seasons and a part of the first season, right? So he has 78 goals. His numbers are going to look better here than if he goes up to the SPHL and doesn't score as much. The game up there is just a little bit different. It's a little bit more physical. There's a little bit less room to move. And so you don't score as much. And sometimes a player that's here at the FPHL, part of the whole scenario is, you're going to look good because you're going to score more goals. So either way, in 118 games played in 3 seasons, Tyson has scored 78 goals, 94 assists for 172 points. Now, Tyson is third in the team's history with 78 goals, tied for second with Kyle Powell for 94 assists, and I believe is second in the franchise for 172 points. I believe he's also second in penalty minutes as well, behind Matthew Ballard. Okay. In 15 playoffs games, he has scored 9 goals, 11 assists, and 20 points. I believe he's the only guy in the Black Bears that have points in all 3 playoffs. But I'd have to check that. But I'm pretty no, Colin Fitzgerald has points in all 3. He is in the top 3 for every offensive category for the Black Bears in franchise history. Now, I did want to read some of the quotes. Binghamton has become my home over the past 3 years, and last season we accomplished our goal of bringing home the cup. We might have finished the job last year, but this group is never satisfied, and we can't wait for the season to get going. That was Tyson Kirkby's comments. It's big to have Kirkby back with us again. He is a vital piece of our team that we need to run it back again this season. I know what he brings to the table with his production, and I can't wait for things to get going here again soon. And that was a quote from head coach Brant Sherwood. So what are the impacts? What does it mean that they signed Coach Sherwood and they brought back Tyson Kirkby? I believe this is really more about what Andreas really wants. Andreas really wants to put every effort he can into winning another championship, and he wants to go back-to-back. He forked out some dough to bring back Brant Sherwood. I don't know the amount, but I know that Brant Sherwood got a nice increase in what he was being paid last year to this year. And for people who say, oh, why are you even talking about that? Well, because it's important, right? These people do get paid. I think Tyson Kirkby is probably, if they can find a way to pay him a little bit more, they're going to pay him a little bit more to be back here. And why? Why is it important? Well, because these two guys are the leadership group. I have heard that they are potentially looking for a full-time assistant coach to help out Brant with certain aspects of the game. I think that is something that is also on the table of something that they want to do, and I think that's a great idea. I think Tom Reynolds was fine for the 2.5 years that he was here doing what he was doing. But I think it's true. If you want to run this to the point where you're going to win championships, not just one championship, they're not satisfied with just one championship, but to win multiple championships, you need to have the right staff. This is not an organization that's making no money. I mean, you can't tell me they're not making money when you had 5,011 fans there for the championship game. Your average continues to go up. You've raised the ticket prices. They're making money, so why not put it back into the organization? And that is exactly what Andreas is doing. So I'm giving you a little bit of that hard love of telling you the way it is, but that's the way it is. The organization is not doing bad, and there was obviously options on the table. I'm not going to tell you who and with who, but there were options for Brant. But he came back. He made the decision, and Andreas had to pony up a little bit, and that's okay. That's okay. That's part of this business. That is like that all the way through up into the NHL. And for anyone to think that it doesn't happen at this level or it's not important, it is important. It is important. He won a championship in a year and a half of being the head coach, and he deserved to get paid, and he got paid. And I think that bringing Tyson back, getting both of these guys back on board, it is, I don't want to say it's not an uphill battle to win another championship, but man, it just got a lot easier because both of these guys are back. The players that played with Tyson this year, they know what Tyson is going to bring. Coach knows what Tyson is going to bring. And he's going to be able to recruit and bring people in because of the success that the two of them had here. So without a doubt, I think this is huge. The impact is they're going to get players here easier because they're both back. Tyson's not going to the SPHL. He's not, going to run out. I don't believe he would ever do that on the Black Bears now that he's committed. Will he go play a couple games somewhere? Maybe on an off weekend again? Absolutely. But I think what this does with Brant coming back and Tyson coming back, it's a possibility that you see 20 games with Donald Oliveri, and we know what he's done for this team. Maybe Gavin Yates comes back because he sees that as a core. Maybe Austin Thompson, Jesse Anderson, maybe they come back. And this is a core group that I think with rookies and the newer players, the Utoros, the players that came in this season, they have a chance. Now, there are some players that are going to leave, and you're going to find this out in the next few weeks or so. There are players that are going to leave because they might get a better position, right? Somebody who's on the fourth line in the NHL, whether it be defense or whether it be a forward, sometimes they look like Gaudreau, who just got signed. He's thinking he's bettering his position. He was with the Rangers. He was on the fourth line. I thought he played great in the playoffs. He was a guy that we certainly needed to step up, and he stepped up. I think he scored more goals in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. He went and he signed somewhere else. Why? Because he thinks he's going to better his position. So some players are going to do that. Even though they just won a championship, some people are just going to leave. So there's going to be new people coming in. So the impacts of having Tyson and Brant back is it's easier to recruit high-end players because they know what these two have already done. So that's huge. It's really, really, really important. So good to see. I think we'll find out as soon as we get the expansion draft done, more things are going to come through the transaction wire so much quicker. And that's a big part of it. We don't know what's going to happen with Sam and Eggy. Maybe Eggy gets picked up by somebody in the expansion draft, or Sam does. They both want to come back to Binghamton. I've spoken to both of them. I know specifically they want to come back to Binghamton. They want to play here. They know it's good here. I mean, when you hear Eggy talk about at the end of the interview about playing in front of the fans here, it was some of these guys never experienced that. They didn't experience, even in their juniors and in their collegiate days, they didn't experience what they got from Binghamton. So I think a lot of them are going to want to come back, and they're going to do whatever they can to come back and show that Coach Sherwood that they want to go and do it a second time, which is going to be very cool. Let me look at the roster here real quick because I'm going to pull up the roster for the Binghamton Black Bears here. Like I said, Jesse Anderson, I think he could come back. Dakota Bond, I think, is going to get a shot somewhere else. I do think he's got an SP or an ECHL. I think Dakota Bond has the skill set, and I'm being completely honest here. I don't know what he needs to do. He's 6'3", 177 pounds. Maybe he needs to put on 13 or 14 more pounds of muscle. But I think Dakota Bond is that first guy from the ACHA that could go from the Fed maybe to the ECHL and do well. He's got the skills. Maybe 13, maybe 20 more pounds of weight of muscle, and he gets him there. I mean, he's 6'3". I mean, that's not a bad size for a defenseman in the NHL, right? Connor Smith, he's 6'4" and 215 pounds. But Connor's a big boy. Connor's big. But I could see Dakota Bond. Matthew Ballard, I think he's here or he's playing possibly in the ECHL or the SPHL. Cameron Clark, I think he's the guy to look out for next year. If he comes back to Binghamton this upcoming season, he's somebody to definitely look out for. Colin Fitzgerald, it's interesting about Colin because he's listed as a pro now, and so you get to weigh the options, the good and the bad, with Colin. I don't think there's really any really bad, but more of the amount of games that he has, right? Because you have to have a certain amount of rookies. And you can only have a certain amount of veterans and pros and that kind of stuff. That's a whole big thing, right? But with Colin, he's the proof that you can go to the SPHL and it's not going to work out for you. And it's still single A. So why not play here? If you're going to play single A, I'm sorry. There are 14 teams now in the FBHL. There's going to be 10 teams in the SPHL. And Binghamton is still one of the best places to play of those 24 cities. The other 23 cities, there are some good ones. Don't get me wrong. I think playing in Athens is going to be pretty nice with the new arena. Okay? And there are a couple places in the SPHL which are good places to play. But I'm going to say Binghamton is still one of the best organizations and best cities to play professional hockey in. I will say that until I'm blue in the face or I'm dead. Josh Fletcher, I think he's going to get picked up. I don't know. Josh Fletcher is one of those guys where, man, I really like the way he plays. I really wish he was like a couple inches taller, maybe 15 pounds heavier. But, man, I really like the way he plays. And that kid start throwing gloves, really great. Andrew Logar, Spitfire, he's somebody I definitely hope comes back. We haven't seen enough of Ramak Akers. We haven't seen enough. Kyle Stefan is not going to be back. That's a definite. I mean, he's going to go play in the ECHL. I really, truly think he's going to hook up with an ECHL team. He ain't going to be back. Dan Stone has a chance. I mean, he's 6'4", 215 pounds. I think he's got. I think he and Dakota Bond have two of the best chances of playing a substantial amount of time in the FPHL, but could make an ECHL team. And who knows? They could be one of those rare commodities that makes it to the AHL. And play some games there. Really good players. Austin Thompson, I hope he comes back. I like him. Brody Thornton, we haven't seen enough of. Blake Tosto, probably haven't seen enough of him, but I like what he can do. A little bit on the smaller side of Blake Tosto, but I don't think that matters here in the Fed as much. I think you can get away with being undersized a little bit, but Blake Tosto has some skill sets. Uturo, I love. I don't even care, where he plays. I think I will like to watch him play anywhere. Dan Weaver is another guy, 6'2", 190 pounds. He actually looks bigger than those numbers. I'm sorry. When I see him on the ice, he looks better than that. And I think Gavin Yates, I think if he and Coach Sherwood have a good conversation, he'll be back as well. So either way, That's all I've got for this segment. Let's get into my conversation with Nolan Egbert. I think you guys will really enjoy it. He's just a great dude. Just nothing more I can say about him. He's just a very good dude. And so when we come back right after this, we'll be talking with Nolan Egbert as he's driving from Connecticut. He's our man on the road today, driving from Connecticut back to Long Island, as he was up there working with his goalie coach. We'll be back right after this with Nolan Egbert right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Hi, this is Don Biggs from the 92-93 Binghamton Rangers.
Hi, this is Brandon Buczynski.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Here is another Power Play Post Show interview exclusive with Bob Howard.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. He is on the road right now, and he's like our on-the-road reporter. We'll just call him that just for fun. But he is our good friend, Nolan Egbert of the Binghamton Black Bears. Nolan, welcome back to the show. And I know you're traveling, so whatever you do, be safe. I don't want to hear any screeching of tires of you slamming into something. So just concentrate on the driving and just, talk when you can. But Nolan, welcome back to the show. It's great to talk to you, and I hope you're having a great summer.
Bob, thanks for having me back on. Always a pleasure to talk. I promise I won't be weaving in and out of traffic. I'm keeping it calm and cool.
Now, you're obviously, you told me a little bit off air that you were heading up to Connecticut because that's where your goalie coach is. And obviously having, a goalie coach is very important for a goaltender and everything. And you've been up there the last couple of days, first time on skates and everything. Talk to us a little bit about these last 2 days being on ice again with him and what you guys have been working on.
So since the championship game, I've been mostly off the ice, except for about a month ago. As a favor to a friend, I filled in for his men's league team, and that didn't go as well as I wanted it to. I was still kind of at the point where everything that was still sore during the season was still giving me some issues, so I decided to give myself another few weeks off. But now I'm back working in a more controlled environment with the goalie coach, like I said, and honestly, I felt pretty good out there. It was there's always the worry that when you get back on, you're so rusty, you're not going to see the puck, or you might hurt something. But as far as returns to the ice go, I would definitely rank this one an A+.
Now, you told me that he is the Sacred Hearts goalie coach. How long have you known him, and how long have you been working with him?
So his name is Craig Height. I've been working with him and the rest of the organization that he works with called Connecticut Grease for, I guess, about the past 10, 11 years now. I started working with him when I was 15. Back then he was, I don't believe he was the goalie coach at Sacred Heart at the time. I was also working with another guy known as, his name's Chris Ardito. He's the head coach of Union's women's team, I believe now. But that was the first consistent goalie coaching I ever got. I used to do some camps occasionally, but I think as anyone who's watched me play knows I have a bit of an unorthodox style, but it was a bit to the extreme back when I first started working with him. So it was, he always likes to joke, it was the most fun lesson he's ever had with a teenager, because I come out there wearing the old school Cooper helmet and cage that I wore for warm-ups and Whalers night, making kick saves, 2-pad stacks exclusively, and it was just, I think from that point on, he got such a kick out of it. We were quick friends.
Now, can you talk with me a little bit about that goalie helmet you just referenced and everything? I thought maybe you'd gotten that somewhere else. That was actually your goalie helmet that you used in practice for the goal for Whalers night?
Yeah. So that was actually my main goalie. Well, I can't even call it a mask. It was the helmet. It was my main helmet between the time I was 15 to 18. 14 to 18, but like 3.5 seasons. Growing up, my favorite goaltender was Chris Osgood, and he was to me what the pinnacle of style was for a goaltender. So I researched as much as I could, and even as a kid, I realized I probably shouldn't be heading out on the ice with a vintage plastic helmet protecting my head. So I found a company actually that I don't know if you remember back in 2011 when Rick DiPietro got into a fight. He had his jaw broken.
Yeah,
he couldn't wear a normal goalie mask, so he found the same company actually and had a replica of sorts made, kind of using modern mask material. So a little less crazy than going out there in plastic, but still unorthodox.
That's very cool. Can you talk to me a little bit about the, there was obviously the incident during the finals where Connor McAnana's helmet got hit and everything, and you can't just switch helmets. It's not like that. Like you wore that old school helmet during the warm-ups and everything, and it's not really something that you could really wear during game. But then when Connor's helmet broke and you were grabbing that, you have a lot of head on your hair. Let's be perfectly honest. Connor really does it and everything. The fittings of those helmets are very particular per the goalie. That was a kind of a difficult situation for Connor, right? You almost had to go into the game.
Yeah, so it was, the way a goaltender fits his mask is there's no two goalies who do it the same. Everyone's messing with the settings, strap lengths, etc. So, for example, during that entire thing, my face is a lot more narrow than C-Max is, so we're having issues trying to get the straps loose enough to fit on his face. And it was kind of funny all the times, like, and trying to get it on. He was like, no way, it's not fitting. And I just kept losing it over and over again, which was buying time. In a way, it did end up helping us because I would assume it definitely killed some momentum.
Yeah.
At Carolina, so getting that goal back took the crowd out of it a bit. So, I mean, you could probably call it strategy if you want, but I'd like to call it that just for the sake of, our own sort of ego. Not that we were so picky at getting the mask right. The referee was starting to get a bit annoyed with us, which is why C-Mac eventually played a shift with my mask. It was definitely funny kind of seeing what looked like my face playing in that. When he started skating in and started facing some action, I was just kind of thinking to myself, wow, I'm looking good out there.
But what's funny, though, is like in a part, you know what I mean? Because I know C-Mac played all 7 games, and he did a great job, and we're not going to take anything away. But a part of you actually played in the games, which is kind of nice, right?
Yeah, that's all I like to see it. Even if I wasn't, my feet weren't in the crease, a little piece of me was there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so talk a little bit about the accomplishment of your first season of playing pro hockey. Yeah, the team won the championship. That's great. But I think the three of you, Sam, and Connor, really showed that, a team can rely on 2 or 3 guys to take the bulk of the load. So many times you see in the lower minors where, you look at the stats and there's like 7 or 8 or 9 goaltenders that have played through and everything. But the three of you guys really held the fort, and that was it for the Binghamton Black Bears. Just you, Sam, and Connor the whole season long. There's got to be a sense of accomplishment for all three of you that you guys really kind of held down the fort, and there was never really a time where Brant had to go elsewhere than the three of you guys.
So, like you said, winning a championship is more than just nice. It's all you could ever hope for going into a season. But on the point of having so few goaltenders, especially in a minor league setting like that, it's certainly an accomplishment, and it speaks, I think, more to the Coach Sherwood's belief in all three of us at given points in the season. He was everything you could ask for as a goaltender when you're looking for a coach, someone who was patient with us, who wasn't going to make any knee-jerk reactions. And I appreciate it as well. He trusted his eyes, the eye test. Anyone who was paying attention to the stats could see a lot of other coaches probably wouldn't have kept me on the roster when things weren't going so well on the stat page. I think it was something around like an 870 save percentage for a while. Definitely wouldn't have been something that a very stat-oriented coach would have tolerated for very long. But I think that's another case of Sherwood having faith in his ability to recruit a guy and to see what they might bring to the table, which again was the case with Senac. I know he wasn't happy because in the beginning of the year he just couldn't seem to get a win at the beginning, where he was losing in a shootout, close games, that sort of thing. But it was clear he was playing well, so there was no reason to go and search elsewhere for something that might be an improvement, but at the very opposite end of the spectrum might not have been. So I think goaltenders thrive on consistency, and Coach Sherwood, we had that, which is why all of us had stretches of great hockey.
You know, it's interesting, too, because you do mention that, you know, any other coach that was stats-driven may not have kept you around and whatnot. But it really did feel like to me, and I did I had a lot of conversations. I probably had as many conversations with Coach Sherwood as some of the players did on the team. And I have to say that sometimes he went with his gut. Sometimes he went with what he felt was right. And he always felt that the three of you at one time or another were going to give the best that was in the league. And he said to me multiple times, I have the three best goaltenders in the league on this team, even before Sam was, waived from the team and everything. So your thoughts on Coach Sherwood and the way he kind of looked at the team and the players, because in some cases he let players like Nikita Ivashkin and Tommy Ray go, even though they were, point producers and everything, because he knew it would be better for the team.
I think the benefit of having a coach like Brant is, as a younger guy, someone who's still in touch with what it was like to be a player, to be in a locker room, to get that sort of team chemistry. He understood that chemistry was the end-all, be-all. If a guy, say, was a point producer or but wasn't gelling in the locker room, not to say that anyone was a bad guy that we let go, certainly not.
No.
Coach was good at vetting those sort of people from getting into the locker room to begin with. But more than anything, he wanted to make sure that everyone on the team could, say, room in a hotel together, and there wouldn't be any friction. There would never be any sort of bad mouthing or anything like that. The dynamic of the locker room was that there wasn't any gossip going on. There wasn't any cliques. It was as fluid as could be when it came to who was hanging out with who and who was having a good time. So that was something that was truly unique, and that takes a lot of skill and a lot of faith in your own ability to build a roster. And I really don't think anyone has done it as well as Coach Sherwood, at least in my opinion, in my career.
What is your goal for the summertime? Obviously, you told me you've been in the gym, you've been working out. No doubt in my mind, I've seen a little bit of your pre-game rituals and everything before game time. What you do, some of it is very interesting to me and everything. But can you tell me a little bit about what is your goal this summer? What do you want to get a little bit better at? What do you want to work on? Whether it be, athletics or even psychology-wise, because as you mentioned to me, and it's very true for a lot of goaltenders, the goalie coach is sometimes a psychologist as well and everything. What do you want to work on this summer?
I think most particularly was trying not to panic as quickly, try to stay within my structure a little bit longer. Again, like I said, I'm not the most technically sound goaltender, and I think it is a valuable skill for a goaltender to be able to improvise outside his structure, but at the same time, that should be something you have in your toolbox, not something you're going to every time. Just because you have a very good screwdriver doesn't mean it's going to be good at hammering in a nail.
Sure.
You got to learn how to pick the right tool for the right scenario, and I think that's something I want to improve upon this offseason, which is what having a goalie coach helps with. consistently at least. The past off season, just for a matter of, making the drive to Connecticut and paying a goalie coach, it adds up. So I didn't work as much as I wanted to. Mm-hmm. So that's something I want to change this off season. Maybe a little less shooting clinics with as fun as they are with some of the pro and college guys on Long Island. Maybe swap that a bit for more concise, more focused training.
Yeah, one-on-one time with the goalie coach so he can really kind of watch and monitor what you're doing and then give you, tips and advice, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit. I mean, of course, we don't know what's going on in the offseason with the Fed because they haven't done this expansion draft thing and all that, so we don't know pretty much anything. We do know that Tyson Kirkby re-signed. The captain is coming back to the Binghamton Black Bears. We know that Brant Sherwood has re-upped, and he's going to be back, which obviously I think is going to help with recruitment and getting players there and everything. So we really can't talk much more about that kind of stuff. I know you told me at the celebration, I want to come back and I want to run this back as well and be the number one goalie and come back and win a championship. I know that is something that you told me, and I totally get that. So, how have you mentally gone into this summer not knowing what's going on yet?
So I can't say it's been particularly pressing on my mind. I have faith that one way or another I'll find myself back in Binghamton. So I've really just been focusing on the personal aspect of it.
Sure.
What can I do to be ready for the season when it comes? And obviously, C-Mac would agree. Like, what made us both good this past season was the fact that both of us wanted that net. So saying I want to be the number one is not disparaging to him at all.
No, and
I expect him to come back.
And I didn't mean it to sound that way either. But I think one of the things that I've talked about with all three of you guys here on this show is that all three of you guys are friends. You guys are close, but there still has to be a little bit of competition as well, right?
Absolutely, healthy competition is what drives, an athlete forward in the best way possible. Sometimes, you'll have a guy who needs that angry sort of competition. I've been with players who don't play well with others, but I think me, C-Mac, and Sam all mesh so well together in that we're willing to lift each other up when we weren't the ones in the net. And I think psychologically that helps our own game in a way where we know when we're in the net, we don't have someone rooting for our demise sitting to the left of us or behind us, whatever it may be. So that plays into Coach Sherwood's ability to see the type of people he's bringing into the locker room.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Can we talk a little bit about the NHL? Can you give me a breakdown, in your opinion, what you've seen in the first 5 games of these finals between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers?
So if you asked me this question at the end of Game 3, I would have said we have our definitive proof that defense wins championships. I think this is the first time in NHL history that statistically, we've seen the NHL's number one defense in all categories play the NHL's number one offense in all categories. But the past 2 games have shown when you have the best player currently playing in the world, it's quite a trump card, especially when he decides time to turn it on and to be that transcendent talent in the game. That's not to say the 8-1 game, I think, was a bit of an anomaly. The Panthers definitely didn't have the killer instinct going into Edmonton, knowing that they've got 4 tries to get this done, and the score reflected that. But Game 5 was interesting in that Edmonton was able to survive the storm after they got their initial set of goals in. They were able to make sure they were funneling everything down into Stuart Skinner's chest, making sure he's not moving laterally, which I think any scouting report would tell you that he's, as a big body, he's not particularly mobile, but he's going to be in the right position on the initial shot, which is what the Oilers have been able to make sure is the case 95% of the time for him the past 2 games. So at this point now, if a team like Edmonton can play shutdown defense, then who knows? We may see the first sweep in the finals in nearly a century.
Yeah, and it would be very interesting too, because this would be the first. I mean, if Edmonton came back and won, it's the first time since '93 that a Canadian team would win the Stanley Cup. And I know there's always a lot of talk about that, right? Oh, I'm rooting for Edmonton, or I'm rooting for Montreal, because we haven't had a team since '93 in Canada win the Cup and everything. How important is that really? I mean, is it really that important when there's so many teams in the United States and there are so many American-born players now playing in the NHL? Is that really something that has to be a conversation with there only being the amount of teams that there are in Canada?
I think it's inevitable. There's a certain sense of national pride that comes with it, and especially for a team like, say, Montreal, that enjoys employing French Canadians, like local Quebecers.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's as major of an issue, and I think most people would agree with the international flavor that the NHL has in terms of its rosters. It's not an indictment on Canada and its needs. It's just a matter of economics, where the Canadian dollar is never as powerful as the U.S. dollar, especially with the taxes. I mean, you see this is why a lot of people say Tampa Bay and Florida have been the dominant force they've been over the past, 6-7 seasons now. It's an attractive place to play versus a Canadian city that, you might have the glory of it in a sense, but I mean, it's a huge chunk out of your pocket from taxes, and winters aren't exactly all too friendly up there. It's a tough sell. So I don't think it's a critical issue for the game in Canada or anything like that. It's just a matter of economics that maybe the NHL looks at the next collective bargaining agreement. Maybe there's some sort of tax scaling, a soft cap, something like that. But as it stands at the moment, it's just kind of the reality of the game.
Now, people have told me that you are this amazing human being. You're super nice. People love you. And I'm just going to say one thing to that. When my Rangers lost, you did not rub it in my face. I appreciate that. I hope I'm putting a smile on your face, because I know as an Islanders fan, you don't want to see the Rangers win and everything. But it was nice that you didn't rub it in my face. Although, I will be transparent here. There was a moment at the rink where I yelled into the locker room at you after an Islanders loss, and so that does make you a better human being than I at this point and everything. But because even some of the people outside of the locker room said, "Did you really just say that to Eggy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did. I know. I'm horrible and everything." Were you surprised that the Rangers couldn't get past Florida at least?
I'll be honest, I tried to look at it as objectively as possible as a hockey fan and not as a Islander fan with any sort of ill will towards the Rangers. But I just felt that despite being a better regular season team, I thought the Panthers were playoff built in a sense that there was no hole in their lineup that the Rangers could say that they were truly better in forward and defense position. Shesterkin might have been the single thing that was better than what the Panthers had, and what the Panthers had on the other end was also a multi-time Vezina winner. So it wasn't like the gap was huge enough. Mm-hmm. It was, I think it was just a matter of you had a team that's extremely physical, beating down a team that was able through most of the first 2 rounds of playoffs and the regular season outskill teams. I think there's something to be said for playoff toughness. I mean, we all say that the NHL is becoming softer, more skilled, but teams like the Panthers prove that grit still wins in a sense. I remember I texted you when the Rangers did end up losing. It looked a lot like how Tampa Bay beat the Islanders back-to-back years in the conference finals. It was the Islanders were not a very skilled team in those 2 years. On opponents, and by the time they got to Tampa Bay, you had a Tampa team that could play any style you chose. And if you want to have a scoring match, great. Point, Kucherov, Stamkos. If you want to play a lockdown defensive game, great. We got Andrei Vasilevsky. We'll win 1-0. So it's just depth is a huge matter in the playoffs, and when you have depth and physicality, I think that's a recipe for success. And the Panthers have totally proven that up to this point. We'll see if they can get it done in the face of unrelenting skill. But I would still side with the Panthers winning one of the next 2 games.
Is Bob's the better goalie between him and Skinner?
Undoubtedly. I think that's not to say I think Skinner is a poor goaltender in a sense. There's no such thing as a bad goaltender in the NHL, no one that gets to the Stanley Cup Finals. But I think Bobrovsky's renaissance in his career is simply remarkable. I mean, I've loved his game since the time he was a Flyer. I loved watching him play. It was when he got traded to Columbus. I mean, he gave them an instant credibility. I mean, for the few years he was there, he was 2-time Vezina winner. Mm-hmm. I think he won the Jennings on top of it at one point, and got some teams that probably didn't really need to be or shouldn't have made the playoffs into the playoffs on his back. It was, and hell, he orchestrated probably the biggest upset in NHL history in knocking off Tampa Bay in 2019 in 4 straight. That doesn't happen without him.
Agreed. Eggy, tell me a little bit about why music is so important in your life. Well, where did it come from for you that music became such an integral part of who you are?
Oh, what a question. We're going into some real soul searching stuff with that. But no. What can I say? I mean, can anything bring out emotion in music besides maybe the elation of sport? And I think I've got got both of those well tended to in my heart. So, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I think some people feel music in a different way than others. Not to say anyone doesn't like music, although I like to joke my grandmother is vehemently against noise in any way. But no, music is ethereal in a way that you can't really describe in words. It eludes you sometimes. So the only way to feel it is if you kind of play it to someone else, share it, or you play it yourself with an instrument or through your voice, whatever it may be. Music is indescribable in that sense.
Now, where did it start? Was there a family member? Was there somebody in your family that got you into just loving music so much?
Both my mom and dad are avid music fans. I mean, one of my favorite pastimes during the off season is to go see as many live bands as possible. There's nothing like a live concert, and my parents would bring me to a lot of them growing up. And long road trips in hockey opens you up to, especially in the time pre-iPhone mobile devices, music was the only thing you really had to pass the time on a long road trip. So my mom and dad introduced me to a lot of music that they had as, kids and teenagers and young adults. And you could feel it's special when you kind of look over your seat and you see one of your parents lost in a jam or in a crescendo of something that's special to them.
And what was their influence on you? Like, what musical style did they enjoy so much? Or was it all different styles?
So they both were fans of the 90s grunge, and I think that was one of the first genres that I really enjoyed myself. I was a huge, like easy to say, but Pearl Jam was so influential in the music scene at the time. Everything coming out of the Seattle area in the early 90s just completely altered the way music was being made and recorded. I mean, it was such a departure from the technological flash of the 80s. It was almost a return to the 70s, which brought me to listening to a lot of music from the 70s on my own. Plus, that was the time my parents were growing up, so they were more than happy to recommend some more stuff from that time, which I fell in love with Pink Floyd. Probably the time I was really fell in love with it when I was like 15, 16 or so.
Nice.
It was, especially the Roger Waters-led era, was as dark and gloomy as a teenager's heart could be, so it vibed very well.
Now, okay, so let's talk about the 90s grunge for a second, because I was so against the 90s grunge when it first was there, right? So for me, being a fan of Metallica and Poison and Bon Jovi and Motley Crue, the grunge kind of killed that kind of era of music a little bit, and to a degree. I mean, certain bands survived past it and everything, like Metallica continued to produce albums that, did well and everything, were played on the radio, so on and so forth and everything. But I think when I got into the 2000s and the new metal and nu metal started to come out, I started to realize that the Alice in Chains and the Soundgardens and the Pearl Jams had some really good tunes to them. Candlebox and Collective Soul. I found some passion and love into some of those bands. For you, you said Pearl Jam. Is there anybody else as well in that era of 90s grunge that you really got into a lot?
So you just mentioned Alice in Chains. I mean, that was... that the emotion in that music is something else. Just the unique voice of Lane Staley was is just, nobody has ever been like that and has been like that since. I mean, that tragic sort of raspy, tortured sort of voice was that fit the music so well. It's a shame when you see that sort of artist go the way that seemed, inevitable looking back, not make it out of the 90s. But and guys like Chris Cornell, who had such unseen demons, but as they say, pain makes art, and these are the sort of guys who were able to really transform what was destroying them inside into something genre-defining. So,
which is crazy,
you can tell how that sort of passion really influenced the rest of the 90s and into the 2000s.
Because it's crazy, too, because I've never seen a genre of music where so many lead singers of bands have passed away. And it's almost like that the lead singer was taking on the weight of everything that they were talking about in their songs, and, to the point where they just couldn't bear anymore. And that's just crazy to me to think that, because when I pick up my guitar, and anytime I've ever played, and of course I was never at the level as any of these guys were, I felt exhilaration of playing. I felt the love and the enjoyment of completing a song, and it was this good, and people enjoyed it. And it almost felt like the opposite for some of these guys, where they just absorbed all that demon and that killed them in the end.
It's truly something that is heartbreaking in its own way, but
it is.
When looked at critically, you can't help but think the words they're writing and singing really just gave you such a glimpse into their soul that it's almost a foregone conclusion that they might eventually succumb to those dark things that they were singing about. So I think that era is unique in that way, that you could certainly, as morbid as it might sound, they certainly weren't posers in any way. They truly felt what they were singing and what they were making.
No,
that's something that was incredible.
I totally agree with you. And then when you talk a little bit about Pink Floyd, Floyd is, to me, Floyd, the lyrics in Floyd are amazing, and Roger Walters and Gilmore, they just write some amazing lyrics. But to me, it was the music. It was the instruments and how they put things together in Pink Floyd that just attracted me to them so much and everything. And, kind of like the Doors. When I listen to the Doors and I listen, I can take Jim Morris out of the equation and listen to the Doors music and just be absolutely in heaven. And that's kind of the way I am even with Pink Floyd, which is crazy to think, right? Because so many people love the songs and the lyrics of Pink Floyd, but their music is just so transformative as well.
Oh, absolutely. I truly believe Pink Floyd was a band that was a sum of its parts more than any individual member. Like, I think all you need to see is the fact that none of them had a particularly remarkable solo career by the end of their tenure in Pink Floyd. It was Waters had some limited success, but never anything to the height of what he was doing when he was working with David Gilmour, Richard Wright, and to a lesser extent, Nick Mason on drums. Not to say he was a bad drummer, but in terms of the virtuosos in that group, he was more the mediator between the large personalities than any sort of savant. He was, but no, the rest of the band was so unique in the way they played their instruments. I mean, Gilmour treated his guitar closer to a string section than he did as a rock instrument.
Yep.
You hear some of the sweeping solos. He's not a fast player. He lets things hang and just, again, almost treats it as if it's a violin screaming out instead of trying to make a guitar wail. It's, again, like I was saying with music, it's hard to put into words what feelings you can evoke from an instrument, but like Richard Wright was able to create such incredible soundscapes just with the keyboard in front of him. And well, it's what impressed me with a band like Rush that was able to do something similar with only a three-piece. And he had getting lead work in the vocal cords, the bass, and the keyboard all at the same time. That's true musical talent.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. I've told you in the past that Wish You Were Here is my favorite album. Why don't you tell everybody who's listening, what is your favorite Pink Floyd album?
Oh, without a doubt, The Wall. If the listeners will forgive me for possibly treading over previously discussed area, The Wall might be the most personal piece of art in any sense, movie, book, album, whatever it may be, to me. It was the themes of isolation, longing, or just spoke to me when I was in a certain spot in my life more than anything else. That I always joke if I have the urge to listen to The Wall again, my family should start paying a little bit more attention to my mental health. But no, I just think it's a perfect work from start to finish. Theatrical, big, bombastic, but at the same time solemn and contained.
There was a time in the 80s when there was still the worry of nuclear war. And I remember listening to Mother, which is on side one. And when I listened to that, it really made me think about the world. And that's the crazy part about Pink Floyd, is that depending on which album you're listening to, there will be a song or two, or maybe even more than 2 or 3 songs that make you think about things that were happening at that time. And in some cases, maybe even still today. That's how much their music just kind of transforms and just, goes across all eras of time.
I think that was the greatest strength of Waters as a songwriter, and that he was able to tap into such primal emotions in the time that were contemporary and make them into timeless sort of poems in a way that don't lose their impact no matter how many years have passed by. I mean, we're still talking about The Wall 40 years later, Dark Side of the Moon 50 years later.
Yeah.
that's something that can't be said for a lot of people who wrote anything down, let alone popular music.
No, it's true. Okay, so for Rush, what is your favorite Rush album?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I recently finished Geddy Lee's autobiography, so I've been on a big Rush kick lately. I've been going up and down their whole discography. And it's interesting to hear that, like, just they're a band that has eras to them. Like, their early work was such Zeppelin-inspired hard rock. Then they start getting into these long progressive rock sequences, like 18-minute songs, like between Hemispheres and 2112. It's tough to pin down a favorite album, but I mean, it might have to be 2112, just on the virtue that I think 2112 is the first album I truly fell in love with when I was younger. It was something that taught me that music can be more than a pop song with a hook. It could be a grand scope of art in its own sense. The narrative it told, the changing of time signatures. I mean, Neil Peart, you want to talk about lyricist, Neil Peart was up there as well with Waters. Just able to create such landscapes with his words, like something out of a Tolkien novel was... It's just something to behold, and to be as prolific as a drummer as he was on top of it as well was just such a unique combination. But it's hard to tell when it comes to favorite Rush albums. I just am blown away by the musicianship. I mean, we talk about Geddy Lee and Neil Peart, but then you look at Alex Lifeson, and the only knock on him is that he plays in Rush, and he's overshadowed by two of the best their instruments to ever do it.
Yeah, and what a lot of people may not know, because they hear Tom Sawyer and the usual suspect of songs that get played on the radio. Neil Peart wrote pretty much everything. That's the crazy thing, and he's the drummer. That doesn't normally happen, in rock music. The drummer will lay the beat, and it's usually a guitar player or a singer that is writing most of it. And Neil Peart wrote most of it, and that's the beautiful thing.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. It's, all you got to do is look at a song like, say, Limelight, and just how he was able to convey a feeling of awkward interaction with the fame he was achieving after, like, Permanent Waves, and then the fame he would eventually gain even more so after Moving Pictures when Tom Sawyer became the hit it was. Like the line, "I can't pretend to strangers along the way to friend" is so... I mean, talk about boiling down the experience of a reluctant rock star.
Now, I used Limelight as I was promoting our interview with you. Did you take some appreciation for me using that on Instagram when I did create that post?
I didn't actually hear the audio to it, so that's a funny coincidence.
Oh, you didn't hear it? So you didn't know that I used Limelight from Rush when I was promoting it on Instagram and Facebook. That's hilarious. That's great. I mean, that's just amazing how in tune you are to me and everything. So that's perfect. I love it. Eggy, before I let you go, we've talked about Rush, we've talked about Pink Floyd. Is there a third band that because those are two of the biggest bands in the world. Is there another band out there that you really are into that you and I have not talked about yet?
Off the top of my head, I've been diving into the Talking Heads lately. I feel like they're just how out there they are. I like to joke that it's dance music for people who can't dance, such as myself.
Oh, well, me too. Without a doubt. I can't dance to save my life and everything. What is it? So basically, I mean, because that's a complete different, again, that's completely different from, what the sound of Pink Floyd, the sound of Rush. Talking Heads is kind of like, almost like the middle scape, right, of those two bands, almost in a sense, but different.
That's a good way to put it. They are kind of a halfway point in a sort of moody avant-garde sort of thing going on with David Byrne and his unique mind.
And very unique mind. Yeah.
Funny enough, I was when I was reading Geddy Lee's autobiography, he was saying when they transitioned into a more 80s sound, they were taking a lot of inspiration from bands like the Talking Heads, this sort of new wave era when Geddy started diving into the keyboards more than his bass. So it's a funny connection in that sense where I could see why I might be attracted to both bands in a way.
No, that's pretty cool. Eggy, I hope you have a great summer. I hope we see you back in a Black Bears jersey if you're going to be playing in the Fed. I hope it's obviously with the Black Bears. But let me ask you this last question before I let you go. Can you kind of like relay to the fans what it meant to play in Binghamton and what it was like to play in Binghamton?
I could say without a doubt that it was the most gratifying experience of my life to play to all the fans in Binghamton, and what they gave to me for what little I could give them was truly remarkable. I really couldn't have ever expected the passion that they would bring, the joy that they would foster around this entire team, the city, and the absolute pleasure it was to get to give them anything back in return for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I talked to Connor Smith at the celebration, Eggy, and I said to him, I said, hey, you won a couple championships with Adrian College and everything. Well, what's the difference? What was it like? He goes, we actually had fans here. He goes, in Adrian, it was just friends and family, and that was it. He goes, there are legit fans, people I'll never talk to, I'll never see, but they were there cheering for us and everything. It's a crazy atmosphere to think that, for some people, as rookies, they've never experienced what you guys got to experience and everything, which is pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. It was to see into a crowd of people that large and to know that people is indescribable in a way. It's funny, as I drive right now, I'm just passing by the Islanders arena right now, and to get to play to a crowd of 5,000 or so in Binghamton, it puts a new context into seeing an NHL game where these buildings are they're 3 times the size, but at the same time you kind of get an idea of what looking into a crowd that big is like when you're playing a game. It puts a unique perspective onto it in a way.
No, it really does. Eggy, thank you very much. We appreciate it. I hope you have a great summer. I'll check in with you. Obviously, I'll text you and everything and see how things are going. But thank you very much for coming back on. And now you can tell your family, yes, I've done this more than just once. And you spoke at the celebration, which they didn't think you were going to do, because you are a shy kind of guy unless you get to know you, and then you're pretty much out there and everything. But thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Bob, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on again.
All right, and we'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's been an interesting summer. Right now, we're dealing with what they are classifying here in Binghamton, New York, as not a heat wave. They basically, the National Weather Service of Binghamton is up at the airport, which is up on a hill where it's really breezy, and apparently they're not hitting 90 up there, but we're hitting 90 down here in the valley. here in Binghamton. So they're saying it's not a heat wave, but let me tell you right now, when it's 90 degrees and it's hitting 100 degrees in the heat index, that's a heat wave here in Binghamton, New York. So I hope everybody is staying cool, enjoying the Power Play Post show and listening to it. We really appreciate it. Had a great time talking with Eggy. We got a few more shows that we are definitely planning for July and August, and we're going to keep you updated. And as we know more information about the expansion draft and about the schedule when it comes out, we will be here for you, the fans. And I really appreciate all the love and the support that you guys have given this show. And I'm going to continue to build it and build it and build it. Had a great conversation with the staff of the Binghamton Black Bears on Monday as I went in and talked to them. I was there for like a couple hours talking to E.J. Worth and Brooks Hill, talking to Trevor, having good stuff and planning some stuff out for the future of the Black Bears and the Power Play Post show. So I look forward to debuting any of that kind of cool stuff into the future. But let's go with the must reads and we can get out of here. The Power Play Post show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast and subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search for Power Play Post show and join. Check out the BinghamtonHockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And thank you to Rob Lapolis, our MC, John Petitucci, our musical director, and Binghamton Black Bears championship goaltender, Nolan Egbert. We'll talk to you guys next time right here on the Power Play Post show. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Howard. Have a great summer.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week to the Box Studios Radio Network for all the latest Black Bears news and interviews from around minor league hockey. The Power Play Post Show would like to thank John Patitucci for all the music you hear on the show. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.